Okay, I welcome you all in our today's lecture. And today we're going to talk about pre-Socrates philosophers. So we'll take some philosophers, very specifically, some philosophers, and we are going to discuss about them. And also, along with those philosophers' biography, we'll also be talking about their philosophy, but very briefly, not in, in detail. So, pre-Socrates philosophers. Now, can you recall anything from pre-Socrates philosophy? What was their time and or the way or their trend of philosophies? I mean, what was it like? Can anyone tell me their philosophy? How did they think about the world? Generally, their worldview. What was it like? How was it? Pre-Socratic philosophy, how was it? Based on Greek mythology?
Yes, sir.
No. Pre-Socratic philosophers, their philosophy, was it based on Greek mythology?
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. Then how was it?
Give some sense, sir.
How was it? Who can say? This Greek philosophy, how was it? I mean, this pre-Socrates philosophy, how was it? The main tendency of that philosophy. Okay, if you're confused, then we'll have some recapitulation. The recap, and then we'll jump to the main discussion. So remember that pre-Socrates or pre-Socratic philosophers are the earliest Western philosophers. And you see, from the 5th and 6th centuries, they were there, and they actually didn't depend on the Greek mythology to explain the worldview or their own life, or you can say the natural phenomena. So they didn't depend on the Greek mythology. Totally. Partially maybe, and most of them they didn't believe it, but they didn't challenge the society. And also, we also discussed about different schools of philosophy. And if you can recall that the Milesian, that is one specific, you can see the pre-Socratic philosophers, group of philosophers and their philosophy. And the main proponents, one of the main proponents of this school of philosophy, the Milesian school, was Thales of Miletus. So people say Thales, and also we can say Thales. So let's talk about his life, his biography. Now, Thales of Miletus, he was born in 1624 before BCE, before the Common Era, and he died in 546 before the Common Era. So he was an ancient pre-Socratic Greek philosopher who is often considered the first philosopher and the father of the Western philosophy. Maybe there are other philosophers, but from the known history, we only came to know about the Thales of Miletus, and before him, we don't know exactly any names of any other philosophers. So, in that sense, from the recorded history of the philosophy, the Western philosophy, we have come to know about Thales, about this philosopher. So that's why actually he's called the father of Western philosophy, or he's considered the first philosopher from the recorded history. His approach to philosophical questions, of course, cannot compare to modern or even later Greek philosophers. However, he is the first known person to use natural explanations for natural phenomena rather than turning to supernatural world, and his example was followed by the other great thinkers who would give rise to philosophy both as a discipline and science. So I've already mentioned that these philosophers they didn't actually follow the prescription of the Greek mythology. Rather, they used the natural world, the natural explanations to explain the natural phenomena. So, in their approach, they were quite scientific, or you can say pragmatic or experimental. So they didn't follow the supernatural. They didn't want to explain the natural world and the phenomena with the help of supernatural kind of stuff. So supernatural being, supernatural thing, like Greek gods and goddesses, different kinds of supernatural creatures, and also, our destiny. It was controlled by some kind of gods and goddesses according to Greek mythology. So they didn't believe in this kind of stuff. So this supernatural being, supernatural existence. So they denied it. Especially Thales of Miletus, actually, he denied it. He rejected this idea. And later on, his philosophy was also followed by you can see the later philosophers, later generations. And they It happened because of the contribution of the Thales at that time, because of his contribution to the philosophy. I mean, philosophy developed as a separate discipline, or we can say that it actually get the formation, get the look of the science. So now we have found that philosophy is science, and also it's a separate discipline, but it started with Thales. Now, in addition to being viewed as the beginner of Western philosophy, Thales of Miletus is also the first to define general principles and develop hypotheses. So you see the general principles. Earlier, people actually, the philosophers are not philosophers, we can say the common people or the people living in Greece, they didn't have any kind of general principles. And when can we get the general principles? We get general principles when actually you start thinking scientifically. Because general principles are like hypotheses. Hypothesis means when you start, if you really want to explain something, then you start with a hypothesis, with an assumption. And this assumption is based on your observation. You can use your sense perception, your senses, and also you can use more than that, or evidence, different kinds of evidences, you can use it. Then you can form a hypothesis. So hypothesis is a very general term. It's a very general term, just like general principle. And then on the basis of that general principle or hypothesis, then you will go for the explanation. So you will try to find more specific explanations, more specific informations and data and statistics. And based on those data and statistics, then you will try to prove your hypothesis. Your hypothesis might be proved wrong or it might be proved right. তোমার হাইপোথিসিসটা সঠিকও হতে পারে ভুলও হতে পারে, কিন্তু সেটা প্রমাণ করতে হলে হাইপোথিসিসটা ফর্ম করবার পরে এরপর তোমাকে সেটা নিয়ে এক্সপেরিমেন্ট করতে হবে। তখন তুমি অনেকগুলো এভিডেন্স নিয়ে প্রমাণ করবে যে তুমি যে হাইপোথিসিসটা করেছিলে at the beginning of your research, whether it is true or false, that will be proved at the end of your research, and then you will get the findings, and on the basis of the findings or consequences that we say the findings, then you will go for the result. এই পর্যন্ত কি বোঝা গেছে যে তিনি কিভাবে কন্ট্রিবিউট করেছেন ফিলোসফিক্যাল আর সায়েন্টিফিক ডেভেলপমেন্ট অফ ডিসকাশন? বুঝতে পেরেছো কি তোমরা?
জি স্যার।
So he's therefore sometimes also referred as a father of science. You see, is also referred as the father of science, although this epithet is usually used in reference to Democritus. Another prominent ancient Greek philosopher formulated the atomic theory that states that all matter is composed of particles called atoms. So some people, they call it Thales is the father of science because he started this scientific kind of exploration or experimentation. At least you can say he started this kind of idea. That's why people say that Thales is the father of science, but actually the father of science we call Democritus. He's termed as a father of science because last lecture I hope that you can recall that we talked about Democritus and the atomism, the school of this atomism or atomism, the atomism philosophy, philosophers from this early philosophical period. So since actually he started this idea of atom, and it's a very scientific kind of beginning for explaining the natural phenomena of physical world or the universe. So that's why he's also called the father of science. But in any way, there might be debate about it. But we can say that both of these, they are the father of science because they started this scientific discussion about the natural phenomena. Now, let's take a look at his personal life. This Thales. So not much is known about the philosopher's early life, not even his exact dates of birth and death. So you see that his date of death and birth that we have seen at the beginning of the class, that is, people assumed it. It's not exactly that his date of birth or death, but people assumed from his work that this might be his year of death and this might be his year of birth. So people assumed it. So exactly we know his date of birth, the dates of birth and death. He is believed to be born in the city of Miletus, an ancient Greek Ionian city on the western coast of Asia Minor, in today's Turkey. So you see, this Thales, he was born in Turkey, in today's Turkey, that is, we call it Asia Minor. The time of his life was calculated on the basis of events related to him in later sources, most notably in the work Lives and Opinions of Eminent Philosophers by Diogenes Laertius. So Diogenes Laertius, actually, he wrote this book, Lives and Opinions of Eminent Philosophers. In Bengali, we can say that জীবন এবং মতামত বা অভিব্যক্তি তাদের সম্পর্কে বিখ্যাত দার্শনিকদের জীবন ও বক্তব্য। এই যদি অনুবাদ করি তখন এরকম আসে বইটার নাম। তো এই বইয়ে এই ডায়োজেনিস লাertius তিনি যে কথাগুলো লিখেছেন সেইখান থেকে আমরা থ্যালিসের সম্পর্কে কিছু কথা জানতে পারি। But actually about his life, সলিড এভিডেন্স তেমন কিছু নেই। এই দু একজন ফিলসফার বা ঐতিহাসিক বা ইতিহাসবিদ যারা আছেন, হিস্টোরিয়ানস, তাদের লেখা থেকে আমরা তাদের সম্পর্কে খানিকটা জানতে পারি। So by Diogenes actually wrote biographies of ancient Greek philosophers, and one of the most important sources for ancient Greek philosophy. And this book actually is one of the most important source of Greek philosophy, especially about the biographies of the Greek philosophers. As you can see, it was written in, do you see the date? 3rd century BCE. Diogenes actually he wrote this book, this biography when? Just take a look at it. Even before the birth of the Jesus Christ. So that's why this book is regarded as most authentic, because she was very close to that century when Thales and other pre-Socratic philosophers actually they existed. So that's why his biographies, I mean, we can say those are very close to the authenticity. So who wrote biographies of ancient Greek philosophers and one of the most important sources for ancient Greek philosophy. Now, Laertius tells us that according to the chronicle by Apollodorus of Athens, Thales of Miletus died in the 58th Olympiad, age 78. Now, Olympiad aged 78, 58 Olympiads, it's a different way of calculating years. So before the birth of the Jesus Christ, that we call CE or Common Era or Christian Era, before him, people used to count eras in this way, like 58 Olympiad. And he died at 78. So he got some information about his personal life from another chronicle. Chronicle means it's a kind of, what should I say? What could be the possible Bangla for chronicle? Can anyone tell me? Do you know the meaning of the word chronicle?
পর্যায়ক্রমিক স্যার।
You're very close, project. You're very close. Chronicle. Anything else? Any particular word for this chronicle? কারো জানা আছে কি? ওটা অনেকটা পঞ্জিকার মতো, ধারাবাহিক কোনো কিছু পূর্ণ করা, যেটা পর্যায়ক্রমে বললেন, যেখানে প্রথমে থ্যালিসের কথা আসলো, এরপরে পরে যিনি আছেন তার কথা আসলো, এভাবে সাজিয়ে সাজিয়ে কারো সম্পর্কে যখন আমরা এরকম তার জন্ম, তার শৈশব, তার কর্মজীবন, এটাকে বলে chronicle, সাজিয়ে সাজিয়ে। So this kind of chronicle by Apollodorus of Athens, so he took, I mean, Laertius actually, he took this information from this person, from this book also. So Thales of Miletus was born sometime between 626 and 623 BCE. বলা হচ্ছে যে তিনি এই সময়ের মধ্যে কোনো একটা সময় তিনি জন্মগ্রহণ করেছিলেন বলে ধারণা করা হয়। So we don't have any exact information about his personal life, specifically about his date of birth and date of death. Now, according to Laertius, Hippos, Herodotus, and Dorius and Democritus, Thales' patents were examis and servants who are thought to have been Phoenician origin and well financially situated. So these are the name of his parents. So we don't need to know the names of his parents. These are very difficult to pronounce, but actually you can see, I mean, Phoenician origin and well financially situated. So he was from a very well-off family. So financially they were very solvent, his family. So we can come to know about this thing about his parents. As much as his later life is concerned, there are a lot of conflicting information about his life. According to some sources, Thales was married and had a son named Sylvester, but according to others, he never married and adopted his nephew Sylvester. So maybe people say maybe he was his nephew. Some people say no, he married and that was his son. So there is conflicting information about things, especially about his personal life. We can see here. Now we will come back to, I mean, this is our main concern, his philosophical works, actually how he contributed to the philosophy and how he established this subject as a discipline. So we'll come to know about it now. Now, Thales of Miletus is said to have written on the solstice and on the equinox. However, none of the two are survived, and some doubt that he left any written works. That means people say that maybe these are his two works on the solstice and on the equinox, but none of his works actually survived. So all his works are lost. Only we can come to know about Thales from other people's writing. Other philosophers, when they wrote any text or essays or any book, they mentioned Thales and his philosophies. So from their, I mean, those second-hand sources, we can come to know about his philosophies and his contribution to the philosophy. Now, even in antiquity, there was some doubts about Thales' written works, although some authors also connect him with a nauticalist guy. So you see, some people, they said he's a nauticalist guy. I mean, he has been, you see, how actually he has been revered or esteemed by the philosophers, by the authors. So you see, he is just like a guide, a star guide, nautical star guide. So his written works, also some authors also connected him with the nautical star guide. I mean, with this book, they also say that maybe he has written this book. The later, that is the nautical star guide, however, is highly unlikely to have been written by Thales of Miletus, considering that Laertes tells us that the very same work is attributed to a lesser known Focus of Samos. So you see, from his book, see the conflicting information, how actually it is conflicting information like this. But from this book, people say that maybe the nautical is guided on this book, but some, from another sources it has been attributed to some other writer, and his name is Focus of Samos. Samos is the place, and his name is Focus. So maybe it was written by Focus, not by Thales himself. So there is conflicting information about it, but despite the scarcity of reliable evidence about Thales of Miletus, there is little doubt about his, at the time, revolutionary approach to philosophical questions. So the philosophical questions that he posed on the existing knowledge system, that was his contribution to the philosophy and also to the fields of science. So even actually, we don't find any specific written books or written article by him, so they don't exist anymore. But from other people's writing, his contribution to the philosophy and the way he approach to philosophy or approach to knowledge or epistemology, that we can say, that is really interesting. And that's why actually he is remembered as the father of philosophy. Now, in his metaphysics, Aristotle tells us that. Now, you see, again, from Aristotle's writing, and his book, this is a very famous book written by Aristotle, that is Metaphysics. So from this book, we can know that Thales believed that everything comes out of water and that the earth floats on water. So everything comes out of water and the earth floats on water. So here you can see that how actually he has explained that the water is the key ingredient of the whole universe. So the whole universe actually comes out of water. That the world is made of water and that the earth floats on water. So সমস্ত পৃথিবী এগুলো আমাদের এই বিশ্বটা এটা তৈরি হয়েছে পানি থেকে এবং আমাদের পৃথিবীটা পানির উপরেই ভাসছে। এটা হচ্ছে থ্যালিসের বিশ্বাস এবং আমরা এই কথাটা অ্যারিস্টটলের মেটাফিজিক্স থেকে জানতে পারি। তিনি বলেছেন যে থ্যালিস এরকম বলেছেন, আমরা অ্যারিস্টটলের বই থেকে জানতে পেরেছি, কিন্তু থ্যালিসের নিজের বই থেকে এই কথাটি জানা যায়। বুঝতে পেরেছো কি এ পর্যন্ত? হ্যালো রিয়াজুল?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, according to Seneca, he's another philosopher. According to Seneca, the philosopher used the floating theory to explain earthquakes. So this is interesting because at that time they didn't have any. I mean, science wasn't developed at that time, so people find it. They found it very difficult to explain earthquakes, these kind of natural phenomena like earthquakes, thunderstorm or thunder, and I mean different this kind of natural phenomena. So they didn't find anything to explain. So they tried to explain, especially Thales and in the later generation and the later philosophers that came from the later generations. You can see they also worked on this to explain these kind of natural phenomena. And because people, they didn't have any explanation of this kind of thing, they only believed that those are, I mean, these things are explained with the help of Greek mythology. Gods and goddesses actually, they are responsible for earthquakes and thunderbolt or thunderstorm lines. Now, this means that Thales of Miletus rejected the supernatural and mystical theories that were used to explain various phenomena by his predecessors, which justifies his fame as the first philosopher. So you see, one lies the difference. Though actually we didn't get any specific about his philosophy, about his contribution to science, but we could come to know about his contribution from others philosophers' writings. From there, you can see this is very interesting that why actually he is esteemed or regarded, or you can say he is revered. I mean, in the world of philosophy, because see, he didn't explain this worldly phenomena, or you can say that this physical phenomena, natural phenomena, with the help of those supernatural being or supernatural and mystical theories. He rejected those. Rather, he tried to justify his understanding of the world by using this kind of scientific approach. For example, water. we know what, at least he didn't believe that there is something supernatural thing like gods and goddesses. He believed it in a different way. So he took an ingredient, an element, and this element is water. Is I mean, you can see that's the very primary substance that we can see even in our with our bare eyes. We can see it, and we can clearly feel the water. So you can see supernatural mystical theory. Sometimes it's very vague and they're indistinct, and you cannot understand them properly since they're not theory based. They're just based on belief and some kind of, you can say, rumors, or you can say people just believe in that way, so they don't go for the logic. So that's why it can't simply explain the whole thing properly, the supernatural mystical theories. So you're not satisfied if you really want to know about the thing. So Thales actually, he wasn't satisfied by this kind of supernatural mystical explanation. So that's why actually, since actually he rejected and abandoned this kind of supernatural agenda, and he tried to explain on the basis of natural phenomena, on the basis of natural explanation or scientific explanation, that's actually, you can say, he is known as the first thinker of the world. Do you understand the meaning of hypothesis that I have already mentioned several times? Because we are going to also have this again and again, in a lecture. You understand hypothesis, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
You see, Thales actually, he tried to explain the world by a unifying hypothesis. So he will have different hypotheses, different ideas, and then he will try to explain them, and then he will put them together. And afterwards, he'll explain. That actually, he would do that at his time. Next slide. Although Thales of Miletus is best known as the first Western philosopher, he actually became famous for predicting a solar eclipse. So you see, people actually in his time, they didn't understand these natural phenomena, solar eclipse or lunar eclipse. But you see, Thales, he tried to explain it, and he predicted solar eclipse. These days actually we know this month we're going to have solar eclipse, and we're going to have a lunar eclipse, right? And there are also books available in the market. They call it Punjika, if I'm not mistaken. There actually you can find the dates of the Chandragrohan, Suryagrohan, আমরা এগুলো সম্পর্কে জানতে পারি। জোয়ার ভাটার ব্যাপারগুলো জানা যায়, right? Especially Hindu people, from the Hindu community, they depend on this kind of thing because there are different kinds of programs they set according to these kind of dates or lunar or solar eclipse. এখানে হিন্দু রিলিজনের কেউ আছো আজকে? কেউ কি আছে?
জি স্যার, আমি আছি।
আমি যেটা বললাম কি ভুল বললাম কিনা তোমাকে?
স্যার আমি আনুষ্কা আছি।
হ্যাঁ আনুষ্কা, আমি ভুল বললে ঠিক করে দিও।
না স্যার,
এরকম না ব্যাপারটা আনুষ্কা, ওই যে ধরো ধর্মীয় প্রোগ্রামগুলো ঠিক নির্ধারণ করবার জন্য এগুলো চিহ্নিত করা হয়, তাই না? সোলার এক্লিপস মানে ব্যাপারগুলো। Okay. Now,
জি স্যার।
yes. Now, according to Herodotus, so the philosopher correctly predicted the year of the solar eclipse, which impressed his contemporaries and later ancient Greek thinkers, because in his time, no one knew how to predict solar eclipses in Greece. See, this is very interesting. So Herodotus actually in his book, he recorded this, that he was the first person who predicted the year of solar eclipse, and he was correct. And the people in the Greece, they were very impressed by it. And people followed that technique later on. And also his contemporaries, his contemporary philosophers, they were very impressed by this technique, that he could predict the solar eclipses in Greece. The modern methods confirm that a solar eclipse indeed took place during Thales' lifetime. However, the story about Thales predicting the eclipse is surrounded with controversy, because if he did correctly predict the eclipse, it apparently worked only once, because whichever method he used, it wasn't used again. So the problem is, because in a modern time, we know actually why the solar eclipse and lunar eclipse, why do they happen? We know it very well, because scientifically now we'll have the explanation. Now, problem is that Thales, the way actually he predicted the solar eclipse, people were impressed by it, obviously, at this time, and it was very rare, a rare kind of thing at that time. But the problem is that his technique, it couldn't be used for many times. It wasn't used again because it didn't work. উনি যেভাবে করেছিলেন ওটাকে ওভারই করা হয়েছে, কিন্তু ওইটা সায়েন্টিফিক্যালি তোমার এই চন্দ্রগ্রহণ এই ব্যাপারটাকে আবার নেক্সট টাইম প্রেডিক্ট করবার জন্য তার সেই যে টেকনিকটা তিনি ডেভেলপ করেছেন ওটা যথার্থ ছিল না, সেটা করা যায়। Also, some sources claim he could have used the Babylonian lunar cycle known as the Sages, and that he could have gained the knowledge about predicting solar eclipses from the Egyptians. He is known to have visited Egypt. Most modern scholars think both explanations are highly unlikely. So some people say that maybe he went to this Babylonian lunar cycle. He knew this because this Babylonian lunar cycle, it was used at that time in Egypt. I know, and you must know it, that at that time Egypt was a very civilized society, civilized country, and they also did some mathematical advancement, scientific advancement at that time. And you can see in Babylonian lunar cycle, I mean, they can predict the lunar cycle. তারা পূর্ণিমাটা কবে পূর্ণিমা কবে অমাবস্যা এই বিষয়টা তারা ব্যাবিলনিয়ান লুনার সাইকেল দিয়ে তারা সেটা প্রেডিক্ট করতে পারে, এবং ধারণা করে অনেকেই বলে যে থেলিস ইজিপ্টে গিয়েছিলেন, সেখান থেকে তিনি এই ধারণাটা নেন, নিয়ে সেটা তিনি গ্রিসে তার মতো করে সেটা প্রকাশ করেন। তো এটা নিয়েও মতদ্বৈধতা আছে, অনেকে বলছেন না এটাও ঠিক না, এটা বিশ্বাস করার মতো না, তিনি নিজের মতো করে ওটা তৈরি করেছেন। So they attribute the story of Thetis predicting the solar eclipse to a lucky guess, while something that it never happened at all, and that it was assigned to him because he was a highly respected philosopher who happened to live in the time of the eclipse, and therefore he must have known that it is coming. So what actually it is saying that some people say that no, he didn't do it, and some say that no, he did it. He predicted the solar eclipse. Why did they do it? Because he was a very respected at that time in his society. So আমরা অনেক সময় কি করি, যাকে খুব পছন্দ করি, ভালো একটা কোনো কাজ বা কিছু হয়েছে, আমরা বলি যেটা ওনার মাধ্যমে হচ্ছে, উনি করেছেন, আমরা সে করে না থাকলে দেখা যায় যে আমরা তার উপরে সেটা কোথায় দিই, তাই না? বা তাকে সেই কাজটার ক্রেডিট আমরা দিয়ে দিচ্ছি বা দিয়ে দিই, যদিও আমরা করি। যেমন আমাদের ডিপার্টমেন্টে যদি আমরা কোনো একটা কাজ করি, অধিকাংশ ক্ষেত্রে আমার কলিগরা usually, since I am the head of the department, so what we do, they will try to give the credit to me that because of your instruction and your mentoring and your guidance, it was possible for us to implement this whole thing. But honestly, I know that I just guided them or gave them some idea, but I didn't do anything else. It was their duty. They did it. So it was their success. It's not only mine. I just told them the technique, how to implement it, but they did the whole process and they implemented the whole thing. So the credit actually, it will be for my colleagues. The credit, it's not only for me. So তারা কেন আমাকে ক্রেডিটটা দেয়? আউট অফ রেসপেক্ট, যে ডিপার্টমেন্ট হেড হিসেবে আমরা তার অধীনে কাজ করেছি যেহেতু, সুতরাং এই ক্রেডিটটা কাজের যে তিনি করেছেন, তার নির্দেশনা আমরা কাজটা করতে পেরেছি, তিনি নির্দেশনা বা গাইডেন্স না দিলে কাজটা আমরা করতে। ব্যাপারটা এরকম আর কি, এটা জাস্ট রেসপেক্টের কারণে মানুষ করে থাকে, বা একটা হায়ারার্কি ব্যাপার থাকে যে সেই জন্য মানুষ করছে। সেম থিং হ্যাপেন্ড ফর হিম, যে সম্মান করেছিল বলেই মানুষ। এবং যেহেতু আরেকটা বলা হচ্ছে, there is another reason that he happened to live in the time of the eclipse. So when this solar eclipse happened, I mean during his lifetime, he was there at that time, and after seeing some kind of signs in the nature, so he predicted that solar eclipse is coming. So these are the possible reasons for this thing. I mean, whether actually he whether he could predict the solar eclipse or whether he predicted the solar eclipse or not. So this is the debate about it. Now, in addition to being hailed as the first philosopher, Thales of Miletus is sometimes also hailed as the first mathematician. So he is the first mathematician. Yes, Rahan, do you have any question?
No, sir. ওটা মিস্টেক হয়ে গেছে, স্যার।
Okay, no problem, no problem. I think we're running out of time, so I'll finish with this slide and then we'll discuss the rest of the things in our next lecture, inshallah. All right, so Thales of Miletus is sometimes also hailed as the first mathematician. According to ancient sources, it was Thales who brought the discipline to Greece from Egypt and made many important mathematical discoveries himself, most notably that the circle is bisected by its diameter, and there is a triangle inscribed in a semicircle is always a right triangle. That is called Thales' theorem. So you see how actually he contributed to the mathematics, especially the geometry. You can see it from here. So also he went to Greece, Egypt, and from Egypt actually he brought some idea about mathematics. He learned about mathematics, and then when he went back home, that is Greece, he discovered many more things about, the mathematics, important theories about mathematics. He discovered them, and most notably, you see, the circle is bisected by a diameter. So it's for the geometry, and also there is a triangle inscribed in a semicircle is always a right hand. The triangle inscribed in a semicircle. Semicircle means the half of the you know the semicircle, right? যেটা পুরোপুরি সার্কেল না, দেখতে সার্কেলের মতো, গোলের মতো, কিন্তু সম্পূর্ণ গোল নয়। বলছে এরকম গোল জিনিসে যদি কোনো একটা ট্রায়াঙ্গল আঁকা হয়, সেই ট্রায়াঙ্গল সবসময় রাইট ট্রায়াঙ্গল হয়। Since actually we are not from the, actually I'm not from this science department, I don't have that much idea about this maths, but just for understanding, we can say that he contributed in the mathematics, and that was huge at the time. So also he's called that he's the first philosopher who also hailed as the first mathematician. তাকে প্রথম গণিতজ্ঞ বলা হয়ে থাকে তার এই গণিতের প্রতি তার কন্ট্রিবিউশনের জন্য। So he was the first philosopher, he was the first mathematician, and also he is called the father of the Western philosophy, along with Democritus. Democritusকে এবং থেলেসকে দুজনকে একসাথে father of Western philosophy, Western science father of the জনক বলা। However, just like Thales, astronomical discoveries, his mathematical achievements are doubted by some modern scholars. So it's the same thing. Like Thales' astronomical discoveries, that astronomical discoveries like the solar eclipse, like that, his mathematical achievements are also doubted by some modern scholars. Some modern scholars, they say that actually he didn't do it. So these were not discovered by Thales. So that was all about Thales. I mean, briefly, we don't need that much detailed discussion about Thales. So in the next class, actually, we'll be discussing about Anaximander. But today, our discussion about Thales is done. So now, if you have any questions, or if you want to add or contribute to today's lecture, the floor is open. Do you have any question? Yes, sir. Can you hear me? Do you have any question?
No, sir.
No, sir.
So was it clear today's discussion? Did you find it easy or difficult? সহজ ছিল কি?
স্যার মোটামুটি কিছু জিনিস সহজ, কিছু জিনিস একটু কঠিন।
Okay, no problem. If you go through it again or if you watch the video, then it will be easy for you. I believe that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you don't have anything to say, then in that case, I'd like to conclude the discussion here. And thank you very much for your participation and hope to see you next time. Until then, take care.
Assalamualaikum, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
You're most welcome. Take care. Bye.